One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so before we get started today and dive into all the goodness that I have to share in today's episode, I wanted to tell you about something really special. So I've been working on something behind the scenes that I think you're going to be pretty excited about, because if you've ever heard me talk about my digital course, Profit Podcasting, or my membership, The Potty People, well, you might just be interested to know that I'm creating a brand new program that smashes the two of those together. Yes, we're taking the best pieces of profit podcasting and the community aspect of the Potty People, and basically we're setting it all on fire and coming in blazing with a brand new program. And I'm so excited. So to learn more, go to krystalprofit.com/waitlist. I don't have all the details to share with you just yet, but if you want to get notified as soon as the new program is available, then you want to get on our waitlist. So again, go to krystalprofit.com/waitlist to find out all the details as soon as they're ready. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so we are going to talk today all about your podcast artwork. I'm going to kind of share with you just some of the questions I've gotten over really the last 2 years when it comes to podcast artwork. But one of the main ones is something that most brand new podcasters ask me every single time. So we're going to get into all of it today. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Krystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? Okay, y'all. Today, like I said in the beginning, we are talking about your podcast artwork. And I want to be very clear because I know a lot of you are brand new, or maybe you stumbled upon this podcast episode because we were talking about podcast artwork and you're like, what is that? Is that what you share on social media? Is that what I see in Apple Podcast? Or what? Tell me what you're talking about. So first and foremost, right out of the gate, I wanted to define what podcast artwork is. So whenever I say that, I am specifically talking about the artwork that shows up on all the players where your podcast is listed. So if that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, any of those players, that image right there is your podcast artwork. Some people call it your podcast logo or your podcast cover art, but for the purposes of this episode, we're going to use the term podcast artwork. And this is very different than graphics that you share in your marketing material, or maybe something that you may use as part of your soundbite image. This is very different. And the reason why it's very important is because this is how you brand your show. Over time, people will get to the point of seeing your image, and it's really funny, y'all. And I'm going to go down a little nerdy rabbit hole for you. But if you didn't already know this, I went to school for marketing, and we had a particular class called consumer behavior that I was obsessed with. It totally makes sense why I go down different rabbit holes for when marketing comes up and understanding your people and thinking about how consumers work. This was one of my favorite classes that I ever took in college. I was just blown away by the psychic things that happen. Did I just say psychic? That's not what I meant. The psychological things that happen. There we go. That's the right word. That's the word I was searching for. The psychological things that we go through whenever we're making purchasing decisions, buying decisions, and I think about podcasting as a purchasing decision because you are spending your time, right? You are spending your time, your hard-earned day, your hard-earned hour to listen to a podcast. And more than likely, you aren't going to explore brand new podcasts that have really crappy cover art. Come on, guys. It's not we're not going to do it. And I know, and I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, but we all say we don't judge a book by its cover. But come on, you've been scrolling, you've seen other people's artwork. Maybe when you're trying to get inspiration for yourself, you're you know what? I don't know how I want it to be. So I'm just going to go look at Apple Podcast and the ones that I've subscribed to. I'm going to see, how do they format theirs? What does their text look like? Do they have shapes on there? Is it a picture of themselves? All the things, right? And you're judging them. You can say you're not, but we all know you are. We all know it. We all know that you probably have 2 or 3 images even right now in your mind. You're oh man, I love her artwork. And then someone else, there's a guy on the cover and you're I don't really love his artwork, but I love his show. So it's okay. I will listen to it for him and I don't really care about his artwork, but it's okay because he has great content. These are the things that listeners actually this is what happens in their mind when they're looking at your podcast artwork. So whether you already have a podcast and you've launched it, let's pretend that you've been podcasting for 6 months and you're oh, I don't really know what people think whenever they look at my they think all of those things. They think that they either like it or they don't. Or it's kind of meh, it's okay, but I don't listen to it because the artwork is phenomenal. I listen to it because I know the host and I love their message and I don't really even care. I don't care what it says. You could literally have a stick figure in black and white on your cover art and someone would want to listen to it because it's you, right? So I want you to just understand from a listener's perspective of what is actually happening in their brain. And I talked about this a little bit in episode 201. We talked about what are your listeners actually paying attention to? they're paying attention to your artwork. They really are. And so I don't say that for those of you that haven't launched to feel all this pressure. I do not want you to have, oh my gosh, like Krystal's telling me like this is super, super important. I have to have this perfect before I can launch. No, you don't. No, you don't. I changed my artwork. I had a picture. If you go back to, I'm going to tell you this in the show notes. Okay. So krystalprofit.com/episode 207, you are going to see the original image for the Rookie Life podcast, which is what this podcast was before I rebranded it. And now the artwork that I created for this podcast had an image of me. I was at my parents' house. I knew I was going to launch my podcast soon, and I knew that I wanted my mom because she had a really good camera. Like this is I had like an iPhone 6 at this point, and I don't think she had a really great iPhone either. And we weren't really taking pictures on our phone as much as we are today. And I just remember saying like, Mom, you have a great Nikon or Canon. I don't remember what kind of camera she has, but I was like, can you just take my picture? This is going to go on, like, I'm going to use it. And I have my brand colors on. I had my glasses on. Which if you didn't know that, I wear glasses to watch TV and to drive at night. It's really the only time that I wear them. I don't have to wear them all the time. I can see up close, far away. No, Mama's going to squint. Okay. And I have prescription sunglasses and I wear those all the time. Okay. So yeah, it's very off brand to see that picture and you'll see it. Go to the show notes. You're going to see a picture of me wearing glasses, but I felt like I needed to wear those because it made me look smarter. I was going for that like, oh, I look smarter when I have my glasses on, have my coffee. I look very professional. Let's just get real. I was not being myself. I really wasn't. I wasn't being true to who I am and the brand that you know and love today, right? If you've been listening to this podcast or if this is your first time, hopefully you'll stay around for the shenanigans that I share on this, like all the episodes that are here. But if I'm being really honest, that's kind of what happened with the first go round of my artwork. Now,
being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants. Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
To kind of segue from what I did in the beginning to the number one question that people ask me is, should I be on the cover? Should I be on my podcast artwork? And I always ask people, well, do you feel comfortable being on your podcast artwork? And they're like, well, I don't, but should I be? It's usually like not, it's like they immediately flip the question back around to me. Like I should tell them what they should do. And I think they get frustrated. Maybe this is me like being a mom of 3 boys whenever they have questions to me and I kind of like throw it back like, no, ball's in your court. Like I'm going to ask you another question. And usually I get kind of a sense of where they're coming from. They want me to tell them, well, if you put your picture on the artwork, it's going to get more downloads. Or if you put the picture on there, people will feel more connected to you immediately. Or if you put the picture on there, then you are just immediately going to hit the top of the charts. No. None of that is true. None of that is true. And if someone tells you they are, they're lying. They don't know. They don't know. Unless somebody like, where's the proof? Where's the studies? Like, give me the data to back it up, and then we can have another conversation. But having your picture on your podcast does not guarantee that you're going to have this uber successful show. Actually, just for fun, I'm going to pull my phone out. I have my phone here. So I'm going to look at some of the shows that I listen to most often. Okay, perfect example. One next step, and I'm going to link to all these in the show notes. So krystalprofit.com/episode 207. One next step is a podcast by the CEO and COO of Belay Solutions. They have a virtual assistant company. I love this podcast. I binge on it all the time. They have really great recommendations for how to run the back end of your business. They do not have a picture of anybody on their cover art. None. Like there's not a single, it says one next step. It's very simple, very clean. And I love it. I love this image. And I believe they have an uber successful podcast. I love to listen to it. So let's scroll down here. So Jen Hatmaker, she has For the Love podcast. She has a graphic image. So it's like a logo designed, but it's kind of a picture of her, but it's not. Like it's not a photograph that she took of herself and put it on the cover art. Buzzsprout, they have the Q&A podcasting podcast. They're not on there. Brene Brown, she has Unlocking Us with Brene Brown. She's not on there. I have the Potty Report. I'm not on there. Entrepreneurs on Fire, John Lee Dumas, he's not on there. The reason why I'm giving you all these examples, Entree Leadership, there's not a person on there, is because How I Built This with Guy Raz, like I'm just looking at all these, like they're popping up and you're like, oh my gosh, Krystal, you're subscribed. Yes, I'm subscribed to a lot of podcasts. I'm not even going to read them all because we'd be here forever. Buzzcast doesn't have anybody on their artwork. But I'm trying to give you examples of people who have very successful shows and they are not on the cover. Oprah's Super Soul Conversations, right? And I mean, come on, it's Oprah. She doesn't have to be on there. Everybody knows who she is. But I want to give you, it's basically I'm giving you permission to not have yourself on your show, like on your artwork, if that makes you very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Now, that is me being gentle with those of you who are just like, oh, I don't know if I want to be on there. Like I'm self-conscious or, maybe in a year, whenever I know that I'm better and I can take a better picture, like that's fine. It's fine. I don't like listening to all these people that are saying you have to be on your cover. You absolutely have to, or your podcast is going to fail. No, it's not true. It's not true at all. You could start out with a picture today that you're like, I don't love it, but I got to start somewhere. So I'm going to put it out there. And just like me, you can rebrand. Now, one caveat to me even mentioning rebranding is you can't switch your cover art or the artwork. I keep saying, don't say cover art, but it's podcast artwork. You can switch it now, but don't go flip-flopping every other month. You do not need to change it because we're trying to create that consistent brand. So whatever picture you decide to go with when you launch, I'm going to highly recommend you keep that for at least 6 months. It'd be even better to keep it for the first year. But if you're just like, I really don't like it, then keep it for 6 months and then see if you change your mind. See if you're like, okay, like I really want to change it. I really wanted to change it after the first month, but I'm going to listen to Krystal and I'm going to go with what she says because I want you to create that consistent branding piece where people see the notification pop up on their phone and they're like, oh, there's a new podcast. But what if that artwork is switching all the time? And they're like, oh, like, is this a new show? Did they start a new podcast? Is it the same thing? Do I still want to listen to it? It kind of throws people off. And I don't know about you and how you operate, but I am a creature of habit, like 100% creature of habit. And if you go switching things on me all the time, I'm going to walk away. I like stability. I like things that are predictable. And if a podcast was changing their artwork all the time, I would be like, man, what's going on? Like, what's going on behind the scenes? Like changing it up once a year or once every other year, totally cool, but not changing every month. Like don't do that. I highly recommend from a marketing standpoint, do not do that. But this actually brings up another question that someone had is, well, shouldn't I change the artwork for all of my episodes? Because if you're a Buzzsprout user and you can learn more about Buzzsprout and you can actually sign up for a 90-day free trial where you're listening to this episode, there's going to be a link to try them out for free. I'm an affiliate of Buzzsprout. I've been using them since day one. I highly recommend them. You can go learn more about them in the show notes. But I know on the back end, I don't know how other hosting sites do this, but on the back end in Buzzsprout, you can upload specific episode cover art. Episode, what is it called? Hang on, I'm gonna look it up because we're here and I have my actual Buzzsprout account right here. So I'm going to tell you exactly what it is for those of you that use Buzzsprout. Okay, so there's episode artwork, which defaults to what your podcast artwork is. So that's what it defaults to. Or you can choose custom artwork that changes from episode to episode. I do not recommend that. I do not, because I think that it confuses your brand, it confuses your listeners, and I would much rather see you use different images on social media, right? Like you can put a different picture out on Instagram and a different one out on Facebook. If you look at my Facebook and Instagram, I put out different pictures all the time. I just recently changed the soundbite picture that I use whenever I do a soundbite in Buzzsprout. So you can change the marketing aspects of your show, but we're talking about the artwork here. I'm talking about what you use and what you upload in your hosting site. Do not change that all the time. Please, please, please do not. Okay, so we covered, should you be on the cover of your podcast artwork? The other questions that I get is, should my name be on the cover? Now, there are a few different approaches to this. My gut reaction is no. And the reason why is because the artwork itself, like the image, isn't very big. And if you have a picture of yourself or you have the graphic name on there, then it kind of can either be really small and hard to read if you put your name on there, and you don't want that. You don't want someone to say, well, I see that there's something else down. I can't read that. What does that say? What does that say down there? Or you have like your name shoved on there. Like let's imagine that your name is really long. Like my Krystal Profit isn't that long, but if I were to add that, I'm looking at my artwork now because I have Buzzsprout open. I'm like, I don't even know where I would put it on there and it not be distracting. So I'm always a fan of cleaner images with less text and less busyness, but that's my style. So if that's not your style, then it's a different conversation. But I like things clean and simple and very easy to read. So if your name being added to your artwork is going to make it all jumbled and harder to read, don't add it. Please don't add it. Because that just, if you can't read it, your audience is going to have a hard time reading it too. And you don't want that to happen. So another question that I get about podcast artwork is, when does it need to be ready? Right? So if you're launching, when do I actually have to have it ready? Well, you do have to have your artwork ready to be submitted when you go in to set up your podcast settings. So you have to have this done before you can get connected to all of the places with your hosting site, like Apple Podcasts, Google Play. You have to have your artwork ready to go. You can't submit without having that done and having at least one audio file. So you do have to have it ready before you launch your podcast. So don't think like, oh, I can set everything up and add it later. No, you have to have it before you get connected to all the places. And the only other question I can think of that I get asked most often about artwork is, what about colors? Like, should I just keep with like one color? Because I mean, if you've listened to episodes that we've talked about here, we've had a branding episode that I'll link to in the show notes. It was all about branding your podcast. And we've talked a little bit about colors. I have specific brand colors for my business. I had specific ones for my book. I have certain ones for my website. And I've had people ask me, well, should I use all the colors? Like, do I need all of my brand colors? No, you don't. If you just want to pick one and go with it, one that pops, awesome. If you just want to go with something even plainer than that, awesome. But I don't recommend trying to shove all of your brand colors onto your podcast artwork if they don't all jive together. And at the end of the day, if you're just like, Krystal, I am not a designer, I don't know how to do all the things that you're talking about, outsource it. Outsource it. I feel very strongly about that because I feel comfortable. I've been playing around in Canva for, let me see, I think I started playing around with it like 2014, 2015. Like it was right when Canva really kind of hit the scene and took off like a rocket ship. So I've felt comfortable. I've been working in Canva for years. And so whenever I thought about creating my artwork, I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to do it myself. I did have a designer design the Potty Report, my daily podcast. I had someone help me with that logo, and she did a phenomenal job. I love the artwork for the Potty Report. And I just have to recommend, if you don't feel comfortable with it, if you're just like, this just feels really overwhelming, outsource it. Outsource it to someone who knows what they are doing, because they will be able to tell you, okay, this is the design way that we should go, but you should have at least an idea in your head of the direction that you want to take it as the host of this show. You do need some buy-in. You don't just need to say, yeah, just create something cool. Create something cool, because they'll come back with something that may not match your brand at all, and you will have probably wasted their time and wasted yours. So if you are going to hire somebody, have at least 5 examples of artwork that you love. Not ones that you're like, oh, that's okay. No, go like on a rabbit hole and find 5 podcast cover art that you love. Love, love, love. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, I look at this and I get excited and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to listen to the podcast because it's so cute. Like find those. Find 5 of those and then take them to your designer and say, get creative, do something like this, do something similar to this, because this is what I really love. But that's all I have to share with you today about podcast artwork. I want you to go to the show notes, krystalprofit.com/episode 207. Go look at my original artwork. Go see. It's not fancy, you guys. Like I did this myself. And I don't want you thinking you have to go spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on your podcast artwork. You can always change it in the future. I've done episodes where I've talked about Amy Porterfield has rebranded her show. I've seen Rachel Hollis. She's actually rebranded her show for the 3rd time. So it's possible to pivot once you get going, but you got to start somewhere, right? That is the motto around here, is we all have to start somewhere. So just get something and make sure that you can read it when it's really, really big or when it's really, really small. That is like the other thing, that you have to make sure that your artwork is legible on someone's devices. But that's all I have for you today. So like I said, krystalprofit.com/episode 207 to check out the show notes. If this is your first time tuning in, I would love for you to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. Tell me what your number one takeaway was from this episode, or tell me what you have enjoyed listening to on this podcast, or something that you want to see us talk about in the future, because we have some really fun things left. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Going into 2020, 2021, like we have some really cool things that I cannot wait to share with you. But as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Krystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now and it will say, send Krystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.